Well, hello there and good morning to you. Gosh, we're in the middle of a great series this week to energize your job search. Monday, we talked about resume. Yesterday, we talked all about LinkedIn. Today, we're going to talk about really the part two to LinkedIn. And that is really how you use social media along with your LinkedIn profile to really energize your job search. Tomorrow, same time, we're going to be talking about interviews, everything that you can do to change the equation. You know, the mistake that most people make with interviews, they simply go in there to answer questions. And as I try to remind people, you are actually not there to answer questions. As silly as that may sound, you're there to use the device of a Q&A to really position and sell yourself. So all those secrets tomorrow at 11. Friday at 11, a very special Ask Self-Recruiter live Q&A. If you're not getting your job search questions answered, send them in. Send them in to ask@selfrecruiter.com. That's ask@selfrecruiter.com. All the best ones are always included. So let's get on to today. We have a lot of great content for you. So if you missed the LinkedIn lecture, be sure to check out yesterday's. Remember, the whole series is broadcasting on my YouTube channel. It's also over on my Facebook Live. And of course, it's on my LinkedIn Live as well. So check out that. There's a special version of my LinkedIn lecture right on my Self-Recruiter homepage. And I'll show you that one coming up here. So here's the whole series. Hopefully you can come and join and share it with your friends and all those other fun things that may go along with that. So let's get to today. This is Career Evolution, social media marketing for your job search. Now, of course, we're going to talk about the use of social media marketing primarily with LinkedIn and possibly even route it out through Twitter. But you have to carry this on to the other platforms that you may be using for your job search or your career story management and figure out where to use. Now, subtitle to this lecture is now that I have a great LinkedIn profile, probably after watching yesterday's lecture and working on your profile, turning it into a full three-dimensional sales brochure about you. Well, now that I have that thing, what am I supposed to do with it? Everyone said, have to be on LinkedIn, have to be on LinkedIn. Now I'm here, I have a great profile, and nothing's happening. Did you ever go traveling? Well, maybe pandemic has thrown a monkey wrench into some of that, but think back to the last time we traveled somewhere, stayed at a hotel. In the lobby, over in the corner on top of some machine tends to be a rack of brochures, sales brochures with all sorts of enticing attractions and curiosities that maybe you should consider adding to your trip. Well, your LinkedIn profile can become that same thing, but just like those great brochures can sit over in that rack and become dusty as no one's looking at them, how do you get people to look at your sales brochure? That's your full LinkedIn profile. That's really what today is all about. And we're going to get there really by letting them gently look over our shoulder to see what we're reading, doing, sharing, attending, attached to this great piece of story that we've developed about ourselves. This is how you begin to take the control back for yourself. Now, if you've not seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So if you are suffering the way most job seekers are suffering from poor storytelling in your career, I can tell you the same story that's absolutely letter true in the most dull, sleepy way possible. Or I could tell you the most engaging story that makes you want to grab a bowl of popcorn and just scoot right up to listen to every word. What you have to do across your resume, across your LinkedIn profile, and really through your social media use, which we'll display today, is you have to create interest. You have to create desire. You have to create expectation that I should know something more about this person. Click. And then suddenly they're onto your LinkedIn profile, which should be that sales brochure. Now, a little bit more about my background. You should understand everyone's background that's trying to help you or teach you so that you can really understand where that information comes from and decide how to parse and align that information with your values. Which pieces should I use? Which pieces maybe should go by the wayside? So 7 or 8 years in outside recruitment, that's a traditional headhunter on a desk, having to reach into the competitor companies, find the superstar, lure them out. It's very similar to being a glorified dating guru, really. Maybe should have gone the millionaire matchmaker route. All sorts of things could happen there. two of them as national market, never met anybody, everything over the phone. But then I did a local market in Manhattan where suddenly had to meet everybody. Absolutely, that does change the equation. Spent 3.5 years of my entire 7 or 8 years in outside recruiting as the national trainer across a 100 office recruiting system. So every potential office that would hire a recruiter, they would come into my 90-day program to teach them how hiring actually works. Not how people think it works, but how does it really work behind the scenes? Because we have to solve that problem. Of course, ended up being VP over all those offices before heading out to do what I do now. And that's working directly with clients, helping them elevate their career brand and their story, really opening up pathways and opportunities to them that should be naturally there for them. And yet they're finding challenges breaking into that space or getting the next rung up on the ladder. If you need help, don't forget to check out my Self-Recruiter website, check out the services tab. And if you need to talk before you know which one package is right for you, send me a quick email. We'll set up a time to speak. A few of the resources that'll help you over my LinkedIn profile, you can click on my articles. There's a number of articles that will piggyback on all the lectures that I teach and will help you in a little bit more of a way than just the lectures themselves. We're going to start off with this video. I'm going to bring front and center. It runs about 2 minutes. And then I'll be right back.
I'm John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about using LinkedIn and getting the best out of social media marketing. Your business is built on perception. Perception of the products or the services or of your reputation. Business today is judged by web presence, not just a business's website. In our traditional work life, we didn't hesitate to network with the right people when an opportunity arose. That chance to meet the right people that could help our career. But as a small business owner, sometimes it's all you. It becomes easy for us to prioritize networking away. Oh, not today. Until it's never on today's list. We have so many other hats to wear if we are to reach our dreams. And those other hats are certainly more important. It's important for every small business person to network, to open doors that you may not have even imagined yet. You need to be reaching and communicating with current and potentially new customers or clients. You need to be out there contributing to the discussion about you. And with focus, it takes much less time than you really think to be effective. But you do have to take control. You have to develop your LinkedIn profile into a 3-dimensional sales brochure, all about you, that naturally drives the reader to a singular conclusion. If I work with, hire, or buy from this person, it's the best business decision I'll make today. Then make use of social media marketing tools built into LinkedIn to be sowing your value across the network in updates and postings and other shares that influence the perception of you. Well, there's much more to share as we're just getting started. Now imagine that you have this great communication platform. By the way, that's your great LinkedIn profile that positions both you and your business professionally and effectively. And think about the effects of using and implementing a sharing on a schedule or editorial calendar to simplify your messaging. That's a powerful voice to be heard that affects perception. What would you want others to be thinking of when they are thinking of you? That's the important question.
Don't be distracted by your business. Your business. That's a piece I put together a few years back for Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. But if you replace your business, your small business, with your career brand, because you have a career brand to manage forevermore. And if we don't think about these things that people use to manage their business aspect, to manage our personal aspect, we're not going to gain the same advantage. Now, for the entire lecture series, and today we'll turn this lens towards social media, for the entire lecture series, it's about becoming a self-recruiter. How is it you're going to become one great recruiter that looks after just one amazing candidate, which is you? But you have to even be more than just those couple items. You're going to have to be the planner, the strategist, the cheerleader. You're going to have to learn to pick yourself up with the bootstraps and dust yourself off whenever necessary. A lot of different things involved. The largest shift in becoming this self-recruiter is beginning to network in a very different way. That's the LinkedIn lecture. So make sure to watch yesterday's lecture if you missed it. And you can easily see that on the self-recruiter website, halfway down the page. Then also the second component is keeping one eye on the toughest competitor imaginable. Those 4, 5, or 6 people that would just scare you out of applying for that job. They're going for it. Oh, forget it. Those people that seem so perfect can be beaten so easily with a little bit of forethought, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of planning, because the majority of those perfect people, which almost don't exist, at least in that label, suffer from something called ego and arrogance. And they wake up in the morning and they dust themselves off and they go, oh, who are they going to hire? They're going to hire me. And then they don't actually do their homework. So we can outmaneuver them very, very quickly, but not if we put our head in the sand and ignore them. If we put our head in the sand and ignore them, they will beat us almost every time. Now, freshening up our career story requires a lot of things. So if you didn't do any of the pre-work yet, go back and watch my resume renovation lecture where you have to do a deep dive into your background to rediscover every element of your story. It's really hard to reinvent without that piece of it. Go back and watch the resume renovation lecture. Then we have to essentially ready a digital self-marketing campaign once we've carried that news story across the resume, across our LinkedIn profile. That's not today's lecture, that's yesterday's lecture. And now that we have this new LinkedIn profile, this sales brochure about us, how are we going to use it to market our brilliance, which is part of taking control of the discussion of us, creating that engagement, which is a whole lot closer to that style engagement than the mechanical style engagement. Now, in terms of social media, yep, here's a few: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Meetup, Facebook. But every single day there's hordes and hordes and hordes of new social media apps. So what I'm suggesting is not losing your entire available resource. By the way, as a job seeker, your only available resource is your time. So this is not about social media becoming some vortex that sucks away all of your time and energy. This is about surgical, almost laser use of social media that you can accomplish in just 2 minutes per day. I know everybody has 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes out of your day. Now, let's be clear. It does require 2 hours of homework. So you're not magically going to wake up tomorrow, spend 2 minutes, and you're done. It does take 2 hours of homework. But if we did the 2 hours of homework tonight, and I'll describe all of it here today, then you're ready to go tomorrow and the next day and the next day, really for the next 6 to 8 weeks, just 2 minutes a day to have an effective social media campaign that you may take over 3 or 4 social media platforms that are really the right ones for you. I'm not really sure myself if we can manage more than 3 or 4 in the right amount of time without being sucked into that vortex. Now, in case we're still struggling with social media and what it all means, here's a piece I pulled off of Facebook quite some time ago, but you realize how quickly all of social media changes, even from these descriptions. Now, this is in terms of donuts. So let's run down the list. Twitter, well, I'm eating a donut. That's what happens on Twitter. Facebook, well, I like the donuts. That's what supposedly happens there. Foursquare, don't know anybody that's actually still using Foursquare, although it still exists. Instagram, well, here's a vintage photo of my donut. I don't see too many vintage photos on Instagram. It's evolved. YouTube, well, here I am actually eating a donut. Of course, LinkedIn, my skills include donut eating. And Pinterest, well, here's a donut recipe. Don't really know anybody using Pinterest as a recipe board any longer, although there's probably still a few. social media evolves. We have to evolve as well. You're going to have to think about this influence cycle we're trying to put in place. Now, in the LinkedIn lecture, I talk an awful lot about information being the new currency. And in that lecture, I'm really talking a lot about extracting information from LinkedIn that you can use. But here, what I'm talking about is really the reverse, seeding information to social media that will influence how people think of you. Now, why do we need to be there in the first place beyond all the rhetoric that's bouncing around out there? Well, I don't have to read all of these things to you. I know you can read them yourself. But look at the second from the bottom. All of these are valid, but second from the bottom is most important. With proper use of social media, and the way I describe it is about 2 minutes per day, you can stay on the top of people's minds, or seemingly on the top of people's minds over time with almost no contact, or seemingly with no contact. And yet they're living vicariously going, gosh, why don't we bring John into this team? Or you. Now, as we're thinking about which social media platforms to use, and only you can make that choice for yourself, I can make a strong suggestion of 2 of them. Certainly LinkedIn. I don't know how anyone gets hired in the modern world for any kind of a decent job without a LinkedIn profile. It has become that ubiquitous. So yes, have to be on LinkedIn. In my view, if you'd like to become employed, you also need to be on Twitter. Almost lose that every time that I mention that one. Not talking about the 158 tweets over the weekend type thing, but what I am talking about is maybe opening up a Twitter account, not using it for chatter, connecting it to your LinkedIn account. You just give LinkedIn your password, your credentials, everything else. And then only when you share something on LinkedIn with a simple toggle, you can let it to seamlessly flow out to Twitter, essentially doubling your advertising, because every single thing we share is letting someone look over our shoulder to see what we're reading, doing, sharing, attending, why we're interesting, why we're living and breathing our profession. Now, a few other sites to think about. If you speak quite frequently or speak publicly, I don't know how you don't use YouTube as part of your or Vimeo. It doesn't really matter which platform, but I don't know how you don't use one of those. Instagram is very popular for career, but not necessarily in the way that you think. Now, if we're in creative, absolutely. I have a creative director that I work with. They're on the brand identity side of creative direction, and their Instagram rarely has their work on it. What it does have on it is the behind the scenes things that influence this person's creativity. So it's almost a mood board for their entire brain in design. So yes, there are very design things there, but rarely do you actually see their work. That's not really how they showcase it. It's how they showcase another aspect of themselves. Now, I use my Instagram to showcase all the non-professional struggles with challenge. So my Instagram, which I think is so important, it's one of the drop downs on my self-recruiter website. That usually indicates importance, right? And then you go there and it's John hiking up the Hudson Valley. It's John climbing Half Dome in Yosemite. 9/11's coming around again, so you'll see them fairly soon. Lost one of my sisters, unfortunately, on 9/11. And so that's also one of the easiest ways to share with extended family when that date comes around each year. But every single thing that's posted on my LinkedIn somehow is related to challenge. And challenge ties directly back to what I do as a profession. So what am I talking about here in terms of how I'm using my LinkedIn? It's the other part of decision making. When I hire someone or you engage a career coach, yes, you want them to be capable and qualified, but you also want to know what drives them. Are they interesting? What makes them tick? And that generally is a little bit of a non-work life look behind the curtain. Who are they as a person? Just make sure your profiles are not identical to one another, but work synergistically with each other. And I'll have a sample or two coming up for you. Now, in terms of social media, you have to think about what are my target markets using? Are they using it? Maybe I should or shouldn't use it based on that. Why am I using this platform? I must have a certain idea, because it's not about picking 4 platforms and I have the same idea for each of the 4 platforms. They're all different. I can't speak the same way on Facebook if I were going to use that for career. Ouch for most people. I can't speak the same way there as I might speak on LinkedIn and other platforms. So I have to differentiate. What are your goals for this platform? All of this work has to be done in the homework section, so you really are being effective with your strategy. We're this product. That's what it comes down to. We're this product that has to be positioned, has to get some shelf space, has to have certain lighting. What do you want your product to look like? What do you want them to think about your product? What is it that you do better than everybody else in your field? Or what is it that you think you do better or will do better in the future that will make you that standout? By the way, I hate to break this to you, but 8, 10, 12, 15 years in the same role does not make you an expert. And I'm sure a few people are going to be very upset over that comment. But you know what? It does make you an expert at doing something one way. How many of us have worked at the one company that actually did it the right way? So generally, if someone's been in their role this length of time, they've learned to do it one very ineffective way and never achieve mastery. So that doesn't make you an expert. In fact, that actually throws a gigantic red flag that they're going to filter and search and try to figure out, are you one of those folks that's stuck in the past and just hides and defends? Or do you have a thirst for your profession, always looking for a new solution, cutting edge, what's coming up? We have to be the content guru of you. You're going to have to put your modesty and humility aside. You know, when I do in-person lectures, I have a lot of fun joking about the fact that, you know, we're not Kardashians. We suffer from modesty and humility, and that usually gets some laughs, but it's really just a way to bring up the concept of modesty and humility. Modesty and humility are wonderful traits for all the other aspects of our life, but not job search and not career. These two areas, it works directly against us. Now, I grew up Catholic, so I know a lot about modesty and humility, and my father was a Catholic deacon, so gosh, the point was really driven home at home. And yet I've still managed to become who I am today and do what I do today. And that means the modesty and humility has to go to the side, and your expertise or whatever you've done has to come to the forefront. And you have to, if necessary, you have to give yourself permission to be able to do what maybe culturally seemed too much or inappropriate or just a little bit too brassy. You know what? They would like us dangerously close to the ego and arrogance line. Don't cross it. Don't cross it. If you cross it, they're not going to hire you. But they'd actually like us dangerously close to the ego and arrogance line because they imagine, if I can stomach that person, they're going to produce something. Well, I can't even imagine what they're going to produce, but it'll be different than my expectations. It'll be beyond my expectations. Also, becoming the content guru of you, just like you see here, this allows us to either reclaim or restate, reframe our whole story. There's no sin of omission here. Remember that Catholic thing and all about negotiating sin. There's only sin of commission. So I can leave out any part. I don't know if I said that right or not. Omission, commission. I can leave out any part that I'd like to leave out as long as every single thing that's there is letter true. That's really, really important. In terms of branding our career, you just saw two profiles. You saw my LinkedIn profile and you saw my Twitter profile, which work together, though they're slightly different in presentation. Same headshot, of course. And now I let this content, this is part of how you brand yourself. I let these content or these shares that I've selected flow across both. And they just essentially go out into the Ethernet for anybody to find. And over time, as these things go out there, and yes, as a public speaker, these are really mostly involving me. For you, it would be much more of the looking over your shoulder to see what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending, reacting to. And some of them with you in it, in front of a sign, might be nice. But over time, very, very quickly, even if no one had contact with John, you definitely have an opinion of John and his professional expertise that he brings to the table. What opinion do you want them to have about you and your expertise? So that requires us either to understand why we're a standard or why we will be a standout in our new field. And we have to think about what we'd like to do and somehow find a path that makes sense. You know, in this changed world, it's adaptability that's going to do it. So it's not simply being able to do what's been done before. I'm able to do what's been done before, and I can think in very, very new ways. Kind of gets us down to the point of how you'd like other people to see you or that perception of you. Well, I certainly hope that they think of you in all of these ways, or I'm not sure how they'd like to hire you. more than anything, they need to think of you and see you as potentially the future of their organization. Challenge I talked a lot about yesterday and even on Monday with resume is the trap most job seekers fall in. They want to be like cookie cutter perfect. Oh, I'll be perfect. I'll be perfect. I'll be perfect. Okay, if you're just cookie cutter perfect, interchangeable, I'll take number 3. Number 3, I'm paying you less. No, you don't want less? Okay, I'll take number 2, take number 5. Doesn't really matter. You're all interchangeable. You see the problem. So we somehow have to accomplish that interchangeable, qualified, capable, but also be different, exceptional, special. We have to somehow step out of line visually. So think about, well, what qualities do you have? What makes you tick? These are all potential story elements that you could go out and find material to think about that could touch on these areas. Where's your passion focus? What do you love to do? All of that together combined with a little strategic sharing. Think of your sharing process as almost like playing chess. Can work wonders for your career. Now, if you'd like to know how that can directly affect things, let me tell you just a quick story. One of my clients is a close friend and long-term client of mine. I've helped them transition from a number of roles. Actually, I years ago, I placed them as a recruiter into GTE, into networking, which became Genuity. Then as a career coach, I've helped them move to Liberty Media, Level 3 Communications, Nokia Siemens Networks, Cisco Systems, Motorola Solutions, on and on and on. And I can tell you, if we back up a couple of years when we were at Nokia Siemens Networks, this person was desperately trying to get to the director level. They somehow felt they'd reached a maturity that their timer's running out. My timer's running out. I got to get to director. Got to get to director. Not going to make it. Not going to make it. I'm like, my timer's running too. But I don't look at life that way. I don't look at life as some end date. My dad lived to 91 and he didn't exercise. Now he did lots of hard work. In fact, he was doing work in his own business till he was in his mid 80s. So definitely working and doing stuff that would keep you healthier, but that's a lot different than actually doing real exercise. And I do real exercise. So I'm certainly trying to shoot past 91. Maybe I can make it to 100, maybe even 110. My other sister, Shelly, and I are both competing a little bit. That's a lot of years left to pay. And life's expensive. So I don't imagine something ending the way some people do. But so this person is desperately trying to get to director level, and a couple of different hindrances or challenges that they perceive. Now, this person has always been a larger guy, and the whole time I've known him. So he's not going to suddenly not be a larger guy. So he's dealing with that piece. Also, going gray happens. If we live long enough, it happens. It happens. We all handle it differently. I simply cut my hair so short, I can't see it. So I never get that perception in my head of this old guy, John, because that doesn't match my energy or anything else. He runs out to get the Grecian formula because we're all different. So the challenge was coming in second place twice. Second place twice in a row. Second place. What's going on? I'm coming in second place. So first, it requires us to understand what second place is. You know what second place is? A winner. You know what third place is? A winner. You do not come in first, second, or third unless you're already a winner. They just didn't select you for some reason. You have to solve that part of the equation and disconnect like some emotional, like, well, they didn't like me. They certainly did like you, or you wouldn't have been second. So who's beating this person? Let's think like a detective, a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes. Now, this is in technical program management, like $250 million technical rollouts. So my friend came up on the sales side, very good talker, very good with customers. Customers love this person before moving into technical program management. The competitors started on the technical side, very technical people before moving into technical program management. There's no doubt they're much more technical. And so we're talking about how to solve this challenge. And my client says, well, I'm getting ready for an internal conference down in the Carolinas. I have to present. I was getting some help from my coworker on PowerPoint. I'm like, what? You were getting help from a coworker on PowerPoint? The simplest piece of software on this earth? Now, I have no love for Microsoft, but there's nothing simpler than that. An 8-year-old child can run that thing. I know that's not fair. Their brains are wired very differently than another generation or several generations. But a child can run it. If a child can figure it out, you can figure it out. So what is asking your coworker for help on PowerPoint communicate about your technical prowess when you're a technical program manager and you need help with that? So as I said to my client, I said, get yourself to lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning now. Get yourself to lynda.com and take as many of those quick courses on PowerPoint. You never ask for help again on PowerPoint or something like that discloses a weakness like that. And so we did all this and we put together part 2, a sharing campaign based off of today's lecture. And in 60 short days went from number two to clear choice for the role into a role he'd never held before, head of processing quality. Did very, very well. Moved on to Cisco systems. You can change your future very, very quickly, even if you've been sowing your seeds of doubt for a long time, because my client also had a little bit of a verbal tick. So when he reminded me about getting help from the coworker on PowerPoint, he said the thing that he says quite often, which is, oh, I'm not technical, getting some help from my coworker on PowerPoint. You know what they think about that guy? Not technical. Keep saying it, not technical. 60 days later, clear choice for the role, head of processing quality. Get your credit where your credit is due. A lot of ways to do that, but most of it is, sometimes we think about our resume or bullet point on my LinkedIn, or maybe that's in my review. There's all sorts of ways to get our credit, but also we need to take that credit in advance of those milestone things. We have to take the credit while it's happening across social media. So begin to think about this is an advertising campaign in advance of all that review time that just hammers home what a dynamite individual you are. So projects that we worked on or initiated or developed, absolutely, we're splitting hairs on your contribution to understand how to position it, or results of the project, or level of the accomplishments, or for most people, the educational development, or the books, articles, and white papers, which make up most people's shares. More about that coming up. All that becomes part of the information being the new currency that we're going to seed to the network. Now, here's a 3-level view of the network. We have to think about everything we share flows across this network. And because of the algorithm that determines our destiny on LinkedIn, it's going to land that content we share just on the right desktops that it could be valuable to, that would like to hear about us. This is part of your brand management. So what do you want to land on those desktops? You have to know yourself. You have to have an authentic voice with integrity, and you have to be genuine. In case you've seen a lot of my other lectures, there's certainly many times that I'll say, by the way, no matter what you see here, I'm shy and introverted, which usually makes my friends like spit out their coffee as they're listening to me, because they're like, what? Because they've never seen it. Just because I'm very good at using technique to mask it does not mean it's not true. It's absolutely true. Does that mean I'm being inauthentic or without integrity or not being genuine because of what you see here? Of course not. We're all multifaceted human beings. This is one aspect of who I am also. So use that knowledge to give yourself permission to be the person you need to be. You need to be the embodiment of the best product ever in your field. And you have to share your pearls of wisdom. And that's how we're going to get our value up. Now, perception is reality. I really never did like that concept growing up because I grew up in small business. I mean, perception's reality. Hard work, what you build is reality. Yeah, that's what you'll learn in small business. But today, not good enough just to be really great at what you do alone in the forest where no one can hear it, see it. Did it ever even happen? We have to change reality by changing perception. And that means we have to take control of the story, put our ego and arrogance to the side, and just share things with our wisdom. We're going to create a social media share plan. Let's dive right down into it. We're going to break it all down for you and describe how everything works. This is the 2 hours of homework. It is not very difficult. In fact, let me just sketch out the whole answer right now, and you'll see how easy it really is. I'm going to build a list on a text document, Microsoft Word or text document, doesn't really matter. I'm going to pull together in 1 2-hour sitting 25 or 30 content items, a mix of things to share. Those could be articles, books, or events for most people, but it could be all those other things on your list that I just mentioned. But articles, books, and events. Now, articles, I can go to Google, click the news tab, put in a few keywords about what I do, or the companies in my field, or the competitors in my field, the players in my field. And suddenly what I'll get back in search results are articles that touch on those topics written all over the country, things I could share and comment on. Books, I can go to Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com pretty easily, pull up any book that I certainly should be reading. If I was on the top of my game, I could share those and talk about them. Any event in the next 30, 60, 90 days already has a website for your industry. So those are things I could share and talk about now. If anything was really super special, like, oh, I want to post this on a certain date, yeah, I could use an editorial calendar. Otherwise, I come up with a list, which I'll describe to you, of these items ready to share. I wake up in the morning, grab my first cup of coffee, and I go copy, paste, share. What was that, 15 seconds? Grab my second cup of coffee mid-morning, copy, paste, share. Time for lunch. Oh, wait a minute, copy, paste, share. Mid-afternoon, coffee hound, copy, paste, share. End of day, copy, paste, share. 4, 5, 6 times a day like breathing. It is 2 total minutes per day if you do the homework up front. If you allow it to eat up all your time, it'll eat up all your time, but don't do that. That's tragic. So what are we looking at to create these 25 or 30 items? Well, at first, I'd like to see if you have any of your own real content, projects you work on or initiate or develop, or the projects themselves or the results, the accomplishments. So you get the whole list here. Then go back and fill it in with articles, books, and events. Now, we have to think like a storyteller. Storyteller does not mean something false. I can tell you the dull story, or I can tell you the really interesting story that, when the CEO had reached out and called me and I heard his voice, right back in the moment. So our job is essentially to set the stage and the atmosphere, to put them in our shoes, looking out of our eyes, and really to showcase. Now, this is not confessional, so yes, we should have those really rose-colored glasses, and the tone should be like we're speaking to a dear old friend we haven't seen in a few years. They already know us. It's a warm audience. That's the basics, because this is about nuance and communication and how you're going to give them small, little figurative little nudges to draw them into your story, to always see what interesting thing that you're doing. Now, here's a few of my shares to get you a little bit excited. We're going to make these a little bit larger so you can see them just a little bit better. Top left, actually, that was the first year I was up on stage with Reverend Jesse Jackson at Rainbow Push Wall Street Project. And, the interesting thing there is the same week my father was passing away in hospice. So on the weekends, I'm flying down to Florida to see my dad. And he's like, right to the very end, he was like so excited. He's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these wonderful things are happening to you. How does this happen? And so I'm glad that picture of me is very, very small, because you can't really see the level of stress that's actually on my face, because it's not just that event, it's everything going on in life. But you know what? Opportunity knocks whenever it knocks. Oh no, I'm having a bad week. So much for my opportunity. No, it is what it is. So this is a day I had 2.5 hours sleep under tremendous stress from things going on in personal life. But that was my chance. That was my chance in front of this wonderful large audience. And, the exciting thing was there were 5 career coaches invited. We each got 11 minutes to speak. They were so generous. 11 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I say in 11 minutes? I can say an awful lot. So I actually had a slideshow of about 40 slides just flying behind me nonstop. Excuse my tissue here. And gave a 11-minute motivational pitch. And you know what I got? I got the very first question on the Q&A, and I got 30 to 35% of all of the questions on the Q&A. And I'm the only non-female up on stage, and I'm the only non-African-American up on stage. And I'm going, gosh, how do I get here? How did this happen to me? By learning to open doors. A few other shares here, same kind of thing over at Google. Now, I wasn't speaking that time. A radio show host had invited me to a Google keynote address during social media week. And they said, hey, are you going? I'm like, absolutely. When is it? Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning. Great. See you there. And then, of course, the radio show host didn't show up. But it was very meaningful, because the people that were speaking, I heard something so relevant. And that is, the real world is insufficient. And it was like the Liberty Bell going off in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, been trying to say that concept for so long. few articles, not very uplifting, but they're exactly right for what I do, of course. Shared those. Up at WHCR Voice of Harlem Radio, so I shared that. That was interesting. Up at Albany, talking to lawmakers, attempting to get funding for the public libraries. By the way, I do not receive funding from the public libraries, so this is not about getting John funding. This is about public service getting the library funding. Featured in AM New York. That's always kind of fun when those things happen, so shared that, of course. Broke the regularly scheduled attendance record for anything pre-scheduled at the library, and I'm very competitive, so I posted that. A few other articles and other things, and then, of course, got this call. I thought I was getting punked. Somebody said, "Oh, you're in Essence Magazine." I'm like, "Who is this? Who is this? I should go look. Maybe I'm there." And even though this was a little while ago, very difficult to find. Two reasons. First off, the magazine stores had already started to disappear from the city at that point. They used to be like on every corner. And secondly, Barack was on the cover. And so I grab it, and suddenly there is my book on the reading list. See the shorter gal in the picture? She's the one that actually got me in there because she was standing outside the New York Public Library, talking to me after I'm answering some questions for the lecture. And she suddenly goes, "Oh, I'm blogging about my job search for Essence Magazine." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you should have my book." I trusted it would find its way. And of course, it did find its way right to the reading list, even though she was in that picture talking to some other career coach. Don't look here. Well, sorry for my cough here. Let's maybe come a little bit larger. A little bit of something in the air today. So I want you to think about how opening doors can change your future. And part of this self-promotion is learning how to do it graciously, but in a way that opens doors. That's the influence piece. So here's a few more shares, and I'll give you a little bit more structure. Doing a Morgan Stanley event, so I shared that. One more time. Some Grace Institute, so I shared that. Doing my online boot camp, and of course I love that shot because I saw my father in that role, in that position as a Catholic deacon so many times. He would have loved that shot. Of course, up at WHCR Voice of Harlem Radio for 2 hours drive time, a lot of fun there. Again, all of these things that I share begin to populate to my sales brochure, my LinkedIn profile, so that anybody that visits can suddenly see all that John's involved in. I want you to think in terms of how you structure your message. Maybe, 4, 5, 6 words of opinion, followed by whatever it is, followed by a link. Just finished a great project on whatever is sellable, or selected to lead a new initiative in digital content development, or a member of a cost containment and reduction committee. Well, you won't be very popular, but it is a very needed thing. So that could be a sales thing for you. Or maybe you're reading Social Media Marketing, An Hour a Day by Dave Evans. What a great book. I want you to think about all the different things you could be working on, even attending this series on social media. You don't have to say social media for job search. Attending on social media. Sorry, my throat has decided to cause my difficulty here today. Nudge, nudge, nudge. Small little changes change everything. So it's really as simple as putting together this list, waking up. And so if I wake up today and I go through 6 items, I wake up tomorrow and start at number 7, keep going down the list, keep going down until I get down to the bottom, and I go back up to the top. And this thing goes around and around like a wheel. 25 to 30 items are things that I can share for 6 to 8 weeks without anyone statistically being able to see a repeat. They really can't very easily dig back through 25 or 30 shares before they go, oh, John's repeating these things. So I want you to think about how setting this up and doing this 2 hours of homework is a game changer that will change your future. By the way, if you need to be seen as a leader, how about just being a leader? Is there something that needs to be done or needs to be rethought, something needs to be resolved? My approach to every job where I've worked for somebody else, and I've certainly worked for a number of other folks throughout my career, I never allow myself to be limited by some ridiculous 8.5 by 11 sheet of job description. That's a starter idea. You hired me for my brain. That's a starter idea of how this job should be. I don't limit myself to that sheet of paper. So what are you waiting for? There was one point earlier in my career, I was getting promoted every 4 to 5 months. So much so that in fact I was getting chest pains because I put my heart and soul into my work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, am I fooling them? My plate was so stacked with things because I never say no. I say yes, and I figure out a way to make it happen. I wasn't fooling anybody. They were like, wow, he's so dazzling. Let's promote him up and see what happens over here. Learning how to take control even in other people's brains. Every single thing that you share, all of your communications becomes part of your social media, and that includes your signature block. Signature block can speak volumes about you. Now, here's my ridiculously long email signature block. First time I wrote this out, grown up Catholic, oh my gosh, horrifically embarrassed. Like, what will my mother think? It's like, wow, it looks like you made it, John. Emotionally, culturally, very difficult to do. But once you've earned and built and developed a background, you own it. You need to use it. It's your responsibility to use it to help other people. And you have to put your own modesty, humility aside and allow yourself. For most folks, it's as simple as a basic email signature, something that gives them access to your phone number, access to your email. What, I have to put my email in my email? No. For you, I'll hit the special key. I'll toggle a copy just for you. Yes, you have to put your details in your email. Something also as simple as connect with me on LinkedIn at, the view ones are from many years ago. Motivate them. Connect with me on LinkedIn at. That way, your email signature, whether it leaves from your laptop, your tablet, your phone, every one of them takes a signature block. Your sales brochure all about you travels every single time. Now, what was John's background? Click. Wow, dazzling. Be sure that they're thinking of you as their future. Are you ready for this challenge? We have to manage everything, and we have to be persuasive. We have to get it out there. And that means you're going to have to own it. I hope you've enjoyed today's career evolution lecture. There's a lot more over on my YouTube Self-Recruiter channel. You can also check out my Facebook page, and of course, over on my LinkedIn page, everything is collected as well. A couple more lectures coming up this week that are very, very good. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. is my interview intervention lecture. Most of us need an intervention before our next interview because it's our job to teach them how to select us, not to simply go in there and answer questions. Nonsense. Friday, a very special lecture, which is my live Q&A on job search and career for Ask Self-Recruiter. If you're not getting your job search questions answered, send them in. Send them in to ask@selfrecruiter.com. That's ask@selfrecruiter.com. All the best ones are included, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Friday. Here's the look at the entire series. As I just want to say thank you guys so much. Hit my goodbye button, and we'll see you very, very soon. If you need help, don't hesitate to check out my Self-Recruiter website. Check under the Services tab. And if you need to talk before you know which one is the right one for you, send me a quick email, and we'll set the time to chat. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Appreciate it. Take care.